Let this be a warning to the world.
And to my mutant brothers and sisters out there, I say this. No more hiding. No more suffering.
You have lived in the shadows in shame and fear for too long. Come out. Join me. Fight together in a brotherhood of our kind. A new tomorrow that starts today.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Should we just Oh, I totally cut you off,
No,
but I
you're
was going to
good.
say,
welcome back.
should we cut to the chase and say that we just had our amazing...
I am running off so much adrenaline off that right now. I swear.
For context, we just opened our Marvel Kith X-Men mystery boxes and their shoes, for the record. And so, once again, quick recap. Mystery box, one of 6 different designs of X-Men. Jeff got one, I got another pair,
Yes.
and... we're pretty satisfied. However,
yeah, I got one pair. Dai has 3 pairs. We did an unboxing. We recorded a little bit of content for it, so we're gonna post some stuff on the socials once I get to cutting it up.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was very exhilarating.
Isn't it
I was
cool?
very excited.
It's truly an experience. I'm telling people, it's an experience because you got the sleeve, you pull the sleeve off, you rip the box open. There's a bag. The bag opens, and then you still have the card on top of that.
Yeah,
and it all unifies together. It's again, we covered this in our mini Marvel about Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So if you want to know more about it, go back to that episode and listen. But yeah, isn't it cool?
It was so cool.
Yeah. So
I was like, ooh, what am I going to get?
And Jeff, I think, is going to keep his too, right?
Yeah.
You're
So what's funny
yours?
is, before we say who we got, so I think we both have said what colorway would you want?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I want the Storm one just for the colorway. Because the way I put my outfits together, it would work just more universally.
And so those are white, black, and grayish.
It's I think it's like a dark navy blue.
Is it
I think
blue?
Yeah, because Storm is almost like on a bluish tint color. It could be like a very dark blue, or it is black and then and some gray, and then that's what I wanted. And then Dai wanted, obviously, her man Gambit. And so we did the unboxing, and funny enough, I got Gambit. God. And 2 of the 3 pairs that Dai got were both Storm.
Which is like crazy. If we were just the same size, it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Because then we'd just be like, swap to swap. Yeah. But such is not the case.
It was funny because I saw it because we did it in front of the camera and recording the shoot in front of the camera. And then we both didn't know what Dai got.
Yeah.
And then she pulled it out, and I was what the fuck? And it was Storm, and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, they're pretty sick though. All of the shoe types, I'd love to see them again in person. Yeah. Because at Comic-Con, it was kind of a fleeting moment. You didn't really get to, and you couldn't touch them either. You could only look at them. So to actually have pairs out that you could feel and look at closely, I mean, it's cool. It's just such a cool little thing. And it's especially if you're a fan of Marvel or the X-Men.
Yes. I
mean, again, an experience. So yeah, we'll have that video soon enough, or videos depending. But yeah, it's good stuff, and I can't wait to see you rock your kicks because I know you put together some nice outfits. So that's gonna be cool. You got style. You got style, Jeff. So, on to some show news. So, Thanks and welcome to our new Patreon patron,
Woo!
Edgar,
wow.
for joining the We Are Groot tier. This is one of my coworkers at the museum, actually. So that's really cool.
Hell yeah.
So speaking of Patreon, very quickly, they just launched a new feature that might be of some convenience for our Spotify listeners. So if you're on Patreon and you're supporting the show, you can now listen to the bonus audio that we post on Patreon via Spotify.
Whoa.
You don't have to go to the Patreon page or app anymore. So that's kind of cool. That should be rolling out in the next day or two. I've synced up our stuff. We're ready to go. And if you're not a Patreon supporter yet, what are you waiting for? Please.
Do it.
Because also thanks to our supporters, we now have these awesome mic stands and it feels very professional.
Yeah.
And so
we're hands-free right now.
Yeah, we're hands-free for the first time forever. So that's really fun. But yeah, thanks to our supporters for everything you've done this far. And we hope to have some new supporters in the batch.
Woo!
And then before we get into this episode, last but not least, 3 things. Ms. Marvel is on ABC. It's on TV now, officially.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the first Disney Plus series to be on network TV, which is big look. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, that's ahead of the Marvels coming out in theaters. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is also streaming on Disney Plus now.
Yay.
I can't tell you how many text messages I've gotten of people being like, who didn't see it in theaters,
and they
who are
finally
now
see it.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is like, I'm like destroyed.
Yeah, my coworker told me she just finally watched it too.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, dude. So if you haven't had your heart break yet, go watch it. And if you've already seen it, watch it again and break your heart again. And then last but not least, Loki season 2 promotions have officially started dropping. I watched the initial trailer, but I know that there's some smaller clips like starting to.
Some, not much.
Not much though, right?
Yeah, nothing crazy.
I can't wait to see their McDonald's crossover.
I know.
Collaboration with a special sweet and sour sauce.
Yeah, probably won't be able to try it, but I still haven't tried the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce.
Well, yeah, and then they were selling that stuff on eBay for like $60
which
a pack.
Is gross.
So crazy. And also just gross in a few ways, really.
Gross. Like, what if like no one buys it and now you just got this sauce?
Yeah. Like I've seen people that are selling like the Mulan one, and I'm like, that movie came out.
Oh my God.
Right. The movie came out in 1995, but it's like collector's item. I'm like, why?
It's gross.
So 20 years from now, you'll see some Loki sauce. Which sounds awful. Jeff is making the best face. On eBay.
I'm looking at the freaking shoes, like the colorways of the shoes.
Yeah.
And guys, when I'm not gonna post my reaction video. That was just like I just wanted to do it, but I totally say the name. I thought I'd had.
Well, that's funny, right?
So I was like, oh damn, that was horrible.
The fact that I didn't identify it. I just thought, I was like, wait, maybe they do look different in real life. And I didn't realize it was Gambit, because I didn't realize Gambit had red. I thought it was full-fledged.
I think it was the red that threw me off.
It really threw me off.
I was like, ooh, I got the Wolvie one.
Yeah.
And then we checked the card, and it was Gambit, and I was like, what? Well, we got Gambit.
I got Gambit. Yep.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, all that said, a reminder, we are not experts. We don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out. And so, for this episode, we're going to dive into the origin story of ERIK LENSHERR, a.k.a. Magneto.
Woo!
So, right up the top, same thing we've heard many times before, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And his first appearance was X-Men #1, September 1963, now referred to as the Uncanny X-Men. So, do you remember by chance the cover price for this comic book?
Oh my gosh. So many numbers. I think about this actually a lot, but I'm also
but you were doing really good, so it's this cover. I zoomed in, but it's this cover.
What year?
1963.
I think it was 10.
God, you're so close.
It's 12.
It's 12. Yeah. But you're learning. See, you get it now. Yeah, 12 cents cover price. And so we covered Professor X not too long ago with the same cover. But would you believe that since April, a few higher graded comics have popped up on Shortboxed and eBay. But the highest now, it's gone up, and the prices have varied a bit. So now on CGC, CGC 8.5 on Shortboxed is going for $100,000, whereas in April we were looking at only a 4.5 for $20,000.
Holy!
So someone decided, I have this really good grade, I'm gonna sell it, and there so happens to be a matching one on eBay. Could be the same listing. For $95,000.
Oh my God.
So somebody's looking to pay off some bills, clearly.
I respect the grind.
Right, exactly. And then, of course, the lowest that we found, CGC 1.1 or 1.0, sorry. Shortbox $6,000 on eBay, $2,200. And previously, the lowest grade was the no grade, the one that didn't even register as being worthy enough to grade.
Yes.
But this time, so there's no grade this time, or at least there was, and I didn't pay attention to it. But I actually found one that was graded PG, which is very, very rare. Do you want to give a guess of what this means?
Professionally graded?
No, but that's a great idea. It means page. So someone sent in a single page from this comic book to get graded, which is bizarre because that costs you money to do, and they're only selling it. So they're selling page 10 of X-Men #1 for $46.
I mean, that's a lot of money for one page.
That's so weird. It's weird. And so anyway, you can get previously not graded, but at the value of $3,900, you can now get a loose copy for $2,200. So the prices are fluctuating all over the place. Don't really know why. Maybe it's just the season, whatever, comic conventions are happening.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that someone's trying to cash out a higher grade. So yeah, is it the movies? Is that your first time?
2000.
So you had no idea who Magneto was until you saw the film?
Yeah, probably.
Wow. So you didn't even know the red and purple one. You just knew Ian McKellen from
100%.
the get-go.
Yeah, easily. Because, I mean, for the record, guys, I am a young man. I was a baby when that movie came out. Like, I mean, that was X-Men 2000, right?
Yes.
So, I don't even remember, like, watching, like, I rarely remember, like, going to, like, what movies I watched in the theater. Mm-hmm. So... Like,
you were literally a child.
Yeah. So I was... So it came out in 2000, right?
Yes, it did.
I was 6 years old.
Meanwhile, I was graduating high school.
Because I was 6 years old, so
crazy.
Obviously I probably didn't see it in theaters. I probably didn't start watching movies until...
Yeah, Spider-Man, right? So 2002-ish.
I think probably watched that in the... the only thing I can remember vividly, really, was my very first rated R movie, and that was V for Vendetta.
Which is also traumatizing on its own.
I remember watching The Last Stand in theaters.
Yeah.
But then also, I watched a lot of TV growing up. Mm-hmm. We had cable and stuff. I was blessed with cable.
Yeah.
My dad loves watching TV, so like I would watch like whatever movies would replay on TNT, USA. Like those Fox movies would play on TV, like on replay
constantly.
A lot. I think on TNT and stuff. So I think I would watch like the X-Men, the first X-Men movie.
So wild.
Like a lot.
So did you have like a shock value moment where you first saw them in colored outfits? Were you like, why are they in yellow and blue? Or why are they...
Oh, like how they are in the comics and stuff?
Yeah, because they don't look at all the same.
I think I was just so young. I didn't even know like... Yeah. I knew they were based off comics, but I never got into comics at all. Like I didn't get fully... I'm still not into comics like that, but... I'm obviously more aware of it now because of like you and like how it looks, how the print looks, like what the media was looking like at the time. But during that time period, I was strictly just movie media.
That's wild.
Yeah. So whatever my interpretation of comic book heroes were, it was from movies.
Wow.
So that's why it's like Tobey Maguire's my Spider-Man.
Right.
Like forever.
No, for sure.
You know? Or it'll always be like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Right.
Obviously, that's still the case, but like if I were to go to like...
It made such an impact.
Yeah, if I were to go to like the comic book, I'd be like, I mean, that doesn't look like Hugh Jackman.
Right. Well, it's the same thing, you know, not to dive too deep into the aesthetics so quickly, but that's why people are shocked to find out that Wolverine is in fact in the comics 5'3" versus
Short Kings, baby.
Short King
Short
Summer.
Kings.
Whereas Hugh Jackman is quite literally a foot taller.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard for people to grasp sometimes. Like, no, he's supposed to be a short, not dumpy, but, he's like short and hairy, like little furball, but I digress. So, yeah, for me, it was, it all came together around 1991, 1992 easily. Not only because of the animated series, but also because of they had this arcade game cabinet that you could play. It's like the 4-player one.
Yeah.
And it's super duper classic, and you could play like one of 2, 4, 6 or 8 characters, and it's just like a group play. It's like a button mashing game.
Oh yeah, I love
and
those.
He's like the main antagonist in that game, as he is in many different mediums. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of my first exposure, along with like concurrently with the comic and the show. So it was like a full on, like, I immediately knew in my consciousness growing up as a 7-8-year-old, like, I know who this guy is. And then by the time I was around 9-10, when the series came out, I was like, I know Magneto. Like, he was just a household name.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, super duper household name. So, as you can see, I laid down like at least 8 trading cards, maybe more, and then I'm gonna read one from the Jim Lee, the coveted Jim Lee set. So Jim Lee is like, again, one of the legendary artists, especially from the early 90s. When it comes to X-Men, he really cemented the look of them, the very iconic, yellow and gold, or gold and blue and yellow and red, and what the shoes are based off of too,
Yeah.
Easily said. And so this card probably sounds pretty familiar for anybody who's remotely familiar with this character. Magneto is the X-Men's oldest and most dangerous enemy. Viewing himself as a savior of mutant kind, Magneto has turned his absolute mastery of magnetism toward the creation of a new world order in which mutants rule over a hapless mankind. Determined to defend the mutants he sees as his subjects from any and all threats, Magneto never hesitates to use the most ruthless means to achieve his noble ends.
Sheesh.
So, I mean, like, if you just look at the guy, he's super daunting, super, like, he's...
He got big thighs and that
His 90s, all the 90s artists drew, like, this very... not stereotypical, but a very cemented, like, look of what a superhero is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And they're just chiseled. Like, chiseled, right? That's why Gambit has, like, a 12-pack. So that's essentially the card. And so, yeah, more or less when it comes to the films, that is him. He's got this, like, very sort of pronounced, like, gravitas to him. Uh-huh. And, like, he means well, and he's very intelligent, but he's also, like, diabolical.
I get it.
Yeah. So with that, we'll just dive into his comic book origin. And so ERIK LENSHERR, again, aka Magneto, he was born Max Eisenhart. So that's his birth name.
Got it.
And he was best known as ERIK LENSHERR, often simply regarded as Magnus. It's like a nickname, if you will. And so I don't know what to call him throughout this entire episode, so if I jump around between names, like, forgive me. But ERIK is one of the dozens of characters in the Marvel Universe who's very tethered to the timeline of his origins, which undoubtedly makes the sliding scale a bit challenging to work with. So because of his origin and how it's directly affiliated to the Holocaust and to Auschwitz and the genocide, you kind of look at it and you're like, what? He's supposed to be like 100 years old now, like more than 100 years old. But it's just they have kind of worked around that. And, you know, getting to the nitty gritty of it, he is a survivor of the Nazi regime. And Erik, known as Max at the time, came from a middle-class Jewish family, unfortunately executed during the Holocaust. So he's like the sole survivor, as many of these stories go. The family dies, they are killed, and he survives, but, you know, it's a lot like the movies, as we'll get into. And if you can believe it, despite his 1963 debut, Erik himself didn't receive a proper backstory until 1981. So they went almost 20 years of this character being Magneto without even fleshing out, like, was he Jewish? Was he part of that whole era? He was just a maniacal villain. And so so when we go back to the origin, you know, after he escaped during this historical moment, I don't want to butcher this, but it's Sonderkommando revolt in October 7th, on October 7th, 1944. It's a real event. Okay. So they're tying all these real life events in history to this character. So again, it's one of those things where you're just like, oh wow, I think they really wanted to drive home that this is what's fueling him as a character.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, obviously it's a terrible, terrible thing for many people. So you kind of, once you realize his roots, you're like, that's why he's so passionate and earnest about what he does believe in, because he's been through the trenches, like literally, you know?
Yeah.
And so in 1944, Max escaped, fleeing to Ukraine with the love of his youth, a woman named Magda, who he rekindled with while at camp. So these two grew up together. They were around each other. It's that age-old love story. They fell in love as adults. They got married, and then things went to hell.
Of course.
Thankfully, they both got out. And so during this time, this is when Max takes on the moniker Magnus. And so it's like Magnus and Magda. Adorable.
Got it. Okay.
And then together they have a daughter named Anya. And so it's a lot like we've seen in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yes.
Did you watch all of them?
Yeah, I did.
You watched all of them, right?
I texted you, right?
Yeah, and Dark Phoenix, right?
I did. Yeah, I did. I watched it all.
That's right. I knew it. I was so proud of you. So
I did it, guys. I trekked through it.
And so it's a lot like we saw in X-Men Apocalypse, for instance, when they showed, particularly, like, Ian McKellen didn't get any of this backstory, at least to this degree.
Yes.
But if you remember when Erik takes off and he has that new family and he's like in the woods, that's the same story.
Yeah, okay.
That is supposed to be, I believe it is Magda, and the daughter is a different name. That's the same concept.
That's what I was thinking of when I was reading this.
It's pretty much the same in the comics. It's got some modernized, changes, but his powers were used, or they manifested, and then it incited an angry mob, and they attacked the family. So in the comics, their home was set on fire, and Anya was still trapped inside. And of course, he was thoroughly enraged. Whereas in the movie, they were all outside, and she also had powers, and so they killed the child and the mom simultaneously.
Yeah.
With an arrow, which is still like traumatizing. Do you remember that shot? I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in my head, I was like, really, an arrow?
I know. It is like very dramatic.
I was like, I know what year we are, but damn, come on. Like.
Right? And it's like pierced through the child, but into the
mom also.
Mom, but it doesn't go through.
But that wasn't the part that I was like, whoa. It was when how he killed the guards, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, my neck. I was like, oh my god.
And I know you just see them all like, yeah. And of course, so that's that again. It's another phase of what fuels his rage as a character. And so, if things weren't already bad for him in the comics, Anya is the only one that dies at that moment. And so when his powers manifest, or he shows his powers in Magda's presence, it freaks her out in the comics. And she's like, I can't do this.
I'm out.
And she bounces
almost
immediately. So he's now left with no daughter, no wife. And in his search for her, he adopts another name. And this is when ERIK LENSHERR comes into play. So he's already shed the Max Eisenhardt persona. He's shed Magnus, and now he's ERIK LENSHERR. And so that is when his path crosses with that of Charles Xavier. And so the rest is history from there. And of course, we're going to get through a lot of that in this episode. But that brings us to the character in the cinematic universe, as we'll call him.
Yeah.
And where he's only known as ERIK LENSHERR, aka Magneto, portrayed first by Sir Ian McKellen and most recently portrayed by Michael Fassbender. As well as Brett Morris in X-Men and Bill Milner in X-Men First Class in his youth. So the last time we actually saw this character, I thought it's actually kind of surprising. Last time we saw him was 2019 in Dark Phoenix. First of all, I can't believe Dark Phoenix was already 4 years ago. And second, 2019, wow. Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like that. But
no.
That's how long we've been without the character.
2019 feels like it's 2 years ago.
Right? Like, it's only 2021,
gross.
right? And then you're like, oh no, we're halfway through 2023.
Yeah.
More than.
Yes.
So right off the bat, I have to ask, who is your Magneto?
Well, I think Sir Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Yeah.
Just because, obviously, like I said at the top of the show, like, that's who I saw in the movies. Mm-hmm. But a very older version of, him and Charles. Mm. Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian have bodied those roles, in my opinion. Mm. Mm-hmm. So, but this is where I will say, this is my take.
Yeah.
I think I've seen this on Twitter too. Mm-hmm. Well, not First Class, but I think Days of Future Past is the best X-Men movie.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people.
I think not because of how, like, all the crossovers.
Yeah.
But how well all those stories intertwined.
Yeah.
That was like, I mean, if you think about it, that's an Endgame before an Endgame type thing,
Yeah.
But when they did First Class, where they introduced all these different, like younger versions of the characters, and they did it pretty well. Yeah. Especially, with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender.
Yeah. I'll say, like, when they first kind of pitched the idea with, like, this is who we've cast as these characters, it was pretty jarring at first because it was like, what? And then you hear, oh, they're going backwards. They're going to reboot them younger and then build them up. And I was like, what? But they executed it very well.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Because, like, we got First Class and like, it was good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they did Days of Future Past as a second movie.
Which is
and
insane.
You're kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, how do they intertwine all the OG characters? Like, Halle Berry was in that thing, man.
Yeah, I know. The fact that they even got Anna Paquin to come back.
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I really, because, like, I binged them all that one time for our Professor X episode. But while doing this homework, I was like, oh, that's right. Like, because I was looking at the character posters, so I was like, they really brought it all out for the second half of the franchise, right? Where they rebooted it, and they did double down and make it so much better. And even if they didn't have, like, the if you kind of subtract the original three, and even Origins and all that, First Class onward could still stand on its own.
Yeah, because what was
strong.
Because so after Last Stand, it was the Origins.
It was
right?
X-Men Origins, and then I think the Wolverine.
Yeah.
And
then they did the X-Men
First
reboot,
Class,
right?
Yeah.
So my thing is, because I do remember Last Stand being pretty epic, but also I remember people thinking, like, what the hell is going on here?
It was a
lot going on,
Yeah.
And so I think even this is obviously way before, because it came out in 2007, I want to say.
Yeah, actually. You're doing very well.
Yeah, 2007. Yeah. So this is obviously way before social media and Twitter. People can like really, but I do remember it being like, there's so much going on here, and then the one thing that I took away from that story was Wolverine. Like, he's like, Jane! And then he's like, Jane! And then he stabs her and he's like, no! And everyone was like, what the hell is going on?
Exactly.
And then that was the end of it. And I remember people being like, "Yo, what the hell is that?"
Yeah.
Like, it's just Jean going crazy over here.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they're like, "Oh, okay, maybe we should stop making X-Men movies for a while." And so they did the solo Wolverine,
right?
The Origins, and then they're like, "All right."
They knew where their money was.
And then boom, they're like, "I know.
Yeah.
Let's reboot it with the young people.
Yeah, exactly.
And it worked and then that 2-movie run, it worked in their favor.
Sure.
Sorry,
exactly.
Dark Phoenix.
I know it had so much potential. But I will say that, related to this episode, Magneto is one of the reasons why that movie didn't completely suck. You know what I mean? It was very haphazard. It was all over the place. They were doing the same things and making the same mistakes that they did do with Last Stand, which is you can't mess it up. It's the Dark Phoenix saga.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was 4 movies. Wow.
Yeah.
It was I keep forgetting about Apocalypse.
Yeah, Apocalypse is also one. Yeah. Just kidding. I take back what I said about this. But again, upon rewatch, not as bad. Not as bad as the initial.
I will
watch.
say, I think Apocalypse made more sense to me than Dark Phoenix.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like Dark Phoenix. I wanted to like Dark Phoenix so much more than I did. But again, haphazard. They were just killing people off. They were like, what else can we do? And killing more people.
Well, it was the killing people off, whatever. I was like, okay, that's whatever. But it was also the
alien element.
It was the Chastain element. And
Chastain was such a
and I was like, she's a
waste.
great actor, but we're not getting any backstory.
There's nothing
on this species that's trying to take over the world.
Yeah, and we've talked about them for a little bit too. Yeah.
And I was like, so when I watched it, I was like, why should I well, because the way that Jessica Chastain was playing that alien, I was like, this is scary.
Yeah.
But because of how the story was going, I was like, I have no reason though to be scared of this character.
Right.
Because all it shows is them taking over a human body and that was it.
And that's it. And that was the extent of their purpose.
And they gave that short little backstory in the middle of the movie, but it wasn't grasping enough for me to be like Thanos type stuff or
right. And then of course they just interwove the familiarities that would save it, right? Like the Quicksilver trope, and then they killed Mystique
and then also
off.
still trying to tell a bunch of these other people's stories like Beast
exactly,
and then the Professor, and then you have the death of Raven.
You're
yes,
right.
the death of Raven.
Well done.
So it was stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and so honestly, looking back on it, Magneto was one of the most stable portions of all of those films.
I would agree. Yes.
Right. And so when the question comes up of who is Magneto, I would say the same thing as you and say it is Sir Ian in so many ways, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I love Fassbender, dude.
But
I love him as Magneto.
But have you noticed they kept doing Magneto dirty with Fassbender?
Completely, 100%.
Like in Days of Future Past, it was like Eric, you don't have to kill the president or whatever. It's fine. Then he doesn't, and it's all right, cool. Mm-hmm. And then the next one, Raven dies or whatever. Yeah. Or no. Then he's taken over by. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna join Apocalypse because we're bad.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what? What? And then
it's too easy.
And then in Dark Phoenix, he's secluded. Yeah. But then people come and attack that camp, and he's like, screw it, I'm bad again. And I'm like, what? What do we?
They keep flipping the coin with him.
Yeah.
Constantly. We'll get into that shortly, but. So I pulled aesthetic up from our usual position lower in the show, simply because it's interesting how they've kind of evolved his look over the years, at least in the films. Yeah. All of the costumes that he has worn, either by Sir Ian or Fassi, they take elements from the comics. Yeah. None of them have been 100% accurate. None of them.
Really?
No. Wow. Like the helmet. I was going to say
the helmet
for sure
is probably the closest thing,
but everything else,
really,
definitely not. Like you can look through all these; they almost have the same. It's almost the same outfit, and it's the red and purple. But yeah, he's had different iterations. He's had an all white. We talked about the all white one a little bit in the Professor X episode, but none of them have completely nailed it. I would say of all of them that both men have worn, I would say that I think it's Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. That might have been my favorite as far as Magneto's outfits go, but the helmet from First Class, I think is my favorite helmet.
That one was a good one.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's very sharp and pointed. I'll probably post these at some point on social, but yeah, it's an interesting thing because they haven't quite nailed it. I think there's still potential to really not bring us a full-fledged like purple underwear Magneto, but something that is even closer resembling.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a relatively difficult uniform to fully capture correctly, but yeah, some of the characteristics from different costumes come from different parts of history, and yeah, my favorite is I think Ian McKellen's from X3, and then Fassy's from Dark Phoenix or Apocalypse, whatever one it was. They all just kind of blend together at
some point.
Yeah. So when it comes to powers and paraphernalia for the character, he is once again an Omega level mutant. And so just a reminder, there's a biomutative classification scale that follows the Greek alphabet in classifying mutants by their power ranking. And so, of course, Alpha and Omega are really prime positions as far as the mutant scale goes. But if you want to compare Magneto to other Omega mutants, they would be Storm, Iceman, Jean Grey, which is a huge one.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those are kind of like his colleagues as far as the power rank goes. God, looking up his powers, I was like, okay, this is a mouthful. Holy smokes. So, when it comes to Magneto, his powers include, but are not limited to, magnetism manipulation, force field magnetic armor, including rays and flight, geomagnetic link, gravity decrease, matter manipulation and metal morphing, iron manipulation, electromagnetic sight, electromagnetic spectrum manipulation, including absorption, generation, portal creation, as well as light generation and manipulation, as well as dimensional awareness, astral projection, and telepathic resistance. So those last three are kind of like a case-by-case subjective type of thing.
How much manipulation can this guy do?
But he can basically do anything when it comes to any sort of property. So he is, like you said in the last episode, he's dangerous because it's scary. And we've seen this in the films, which also makes for cool effects.
Yeah.
Because like all he does is, he just clutches his fingers and makes a fist and it's over.
That's like my thing with Magneto, like growing up. I'm like, oh, he controls metal?
Yeah.
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 How do you...
I had a terrifying thought the other day. I was like, could you imagine if Tony Stark were still alive and you put him up against Magneto? Yeah. He would just make him into a ball of like a wad of foil.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make... Yeah, like, I think like the only times where his power was like harnessed and could not be used was when he was in jail in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, all plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're pretty much losing in a fight.
There's no way.
Like, I know movies have to dumb him down because it's like...
Yeah.
Like, dude... Like, there's metal everywhere.
Yeah. Literally everywhere.
Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. And so he also bears genius intelligence. He's a skilled combatant, and he fluently speaks nearly 10 languages.
I can't even speak one.
And so I wanted to... Something we haven't really done before was... ERIK is known for having multiple localities. So, like... The old villain lair, right?
Sure,
This is a huge thing. Like, there's always a lair. There's the Batcave. There's, like, the X-Mansion. So, ERIK in particular... Oh, hello, Rocket. So, ERIK in particular has a couple that are quite famous, honestly. One of which was one that you just mentioned. It's the mutant camp, so to speak. And so, in the comics, for instance, there are a couple of locations in the Marvel Universe as a whole that have spilled over into the MCU. Some that other ones that we're familiar with are Wakanda, for instance, in Madripoor. Those are very iconic locations, and so some of Magneto's are actually on that list, and so I'm just dying to see them in cinematic form. But the closest one we have seen is the one in Dark Phoenix, which is Genosha.
Yes.
And so I don't recollect if he actually said the word Genosha, but in the comics, it's it's a fictional island that dated as far back as the 16th century. So like if you look on the right page, you can legitimately find the history of this fake island. It's fictional island. And they've dated it as far back as the 16th century. And then he didn't come into the play until obviously modern ages. But its relevance is also intended to be a mutant-only nation. So that's something they reflected in the films. And so apparently, I didn't even realize this until I really like did the homework. And I was like, God, they actually have mentioned it in multiple films. So it's been in X-Men. I was like, what? I don't remember. But I guess it's that weird creepy cave place that he and Sabretooth and Toad and Mystique are at. Uh-huh. That's supposed to be Genosha.
Oh,
and then it appears again in X-Men The Last Stand. And so that's the place that they're all at.
Yes.
And where I think Logan kills Jean. I don't.
Yeah.
And then
maybe I haven't seen that movie in a while.
It's been a while. And then of course X-Men Dark Phoenix, which I think is the most realistic version of it.
Yeah, like on an island
where it's kind of
secluded.
Like you're very secluded. They're away from people. They've kind of built up from the ground.
Yeah.
Living in dilapidated areas and just getting by. But another one that's very popular is called Asteroid M. And so it's basically an orbital space station. That's like, it's kind of like Titan to Thanos. There's no cinematic counterpart yet. And it's been blown up a few times in the comics. It comes back. He just takes another meteor. And he's just like, I'm going to have my citadel here. And then it's Asteroid M. But yeah, so those are two things that he's very well known for. As far as the comics go and the crossover with the films. But are you ready for your pop quiz?
I guess. I know I'm never going to do good on these.
He's shaking his head like, no. Okay, no. I think you can get this one.
You say that every time.
I do because I believe in you. I have so much hope.
Okay.
I have so much hope. Okay, so now that you've watched all the films, and this is a film-based one, so you do have a shot.
I did it by choice also, by the way.
Of the items ERIK has used as weapons in the films, which of the following was not one of them?
Okay.
Was it a water fountain, an anchor, metal balls, a quarter, or a paperclip?
That he hasn't. Which one of those has he
not used to kill somebody? I didn't want to say the K word, but he has used all these items except for one to murder someone.
What?
Yes.
Gosh.
I know, it's wild. I watched a 13-minute video of him using his powers. But then I was like, I love Magneto in the movies. So it was a nice watch for me.
This is of the Fassbender ones.
All. But I will say, they didn't get very creative between the two of them. They do repeat a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not that many, but one of these is not.
I want to take quarter out. I feel like I've seen that vividly somewhere.
Yeah.
Just through someone's...
That's First Class. First Class.
Through someone's neck.
Yeah. Kevin Bacon. It was through his forehead.
Yeah.
It was pretty iconic.
Okay. I'm taking the quarter out. See, the fountain throws me off because when you say fountain, do you mean one of those like decorative fountains that you see in like a courtyard type of things?
Or
like a water fountain like at a school?
No, a decorative one.
So there's not much metal in those. It's mostly like cement decorative. Okay. Maybe there's metal inside because of the tubing but that's very, very logistic.
I wish everyone could see your facial expressions. It makes it so much funnier.
But for movie's sake, they could be like, oh, look at him lift this fountain. But you're like, wait, fountains are made of concrete, not metal. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's metal stuff in it. I don't know. Metal, say balls?
Metal balls.
Metal balls?
Yeah.
Like... Trying to remember part of any of the movies where he's like, look at these metal balls. they're sitting somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you said
an anchor.
Anchor and a paperclip.
Correct.
Paperclip sounds like it shouldn't be. It should be the answer. But knowing like movies, they always want to show the most minuscule like ways that Magneto can.
Yeah.
So I feel like paperclip. I feel like there was a VFX shot of him like unhooking a paperclip too. I'll keep paperclip in there. The balls are throwing me off.
Now you know why I included the balls.
Dude. Because the fountain, I feel like fountain's there. I feel like he did, and it was like really dramatic. Mm-hmm. And then the anchor, I feel like he did. I feel like, what movie where is he came? He pulled up on a ship, and he just was like, oh yeah, boom.
Wow, you remember more than I thought. That's also X-Men First Class.
Woo! Okay, anchor out, quarter out. The damn balls, man, they're throwing me off. Because like that's just like, I mean, unless you throw something with enough force that it can go through somebody's body. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking about like them beads, and them like metal beads, bead balls. Mm-hmm. Not used. I feel like there's a scene of him like magnet, like with his mind, like unfolding a paperclip, and he uses it to either pick a lock or a door, or he's whatever. Not that. Mm-hmm. I'm between fountain and balls. How many times do I say balls in this?
Balls.
You know what?
Yep. Final answer.
I feel like my gut says fountain.
That is incorrect.
Ah!
You're so close. So let me just preface this with, I have the same sort of Mandela effect remembering like you do, where I thought I saw him do that with a paperclip.
No.
But I believe, and again, I watched 13 minutes and I did not see a paperclip, but I believe we're confusing that with Colin Farrell's Bullseye from Daredevil, where he does the paperclip and then he goes, and he gets the dude in the neck, and then he just keeps doing it, and he killed somebody.
You might be right.
Right? I was like, oh, I don't think, because I was like, he killed somebody with a paperclip, and I was like, no, that was Bullseye. So I think it was Bullseye. Yeah. So
our minds are messed up.
It's
man.
wild, right? I was like, wow, what do we remember?
The movie's from 2002. Why are we remembering?
Tell me about it. Holy smokes. So Water Fountain, I believe, I don't know which movies these are from, but Water Fountain, it is made of metal. So the ornate parts, like it's bizarre. If you look back on it, you're like, nah, that couldn't have really happened.
I'm getting logistical with it.
Yeah, like, I think he actually trapped Beast in it. And then the anchor is exactly how you said. He was like they were on the yacht, and then he pulled the anchor up and he cut the freaking yacht in half.
Yes, okay.
He cut it off, like the top half off. The metal balls, I'm surprised. This is an iconic one because both of them use this.
I know.
There were those like Bowding balance balls. They're just solid.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, they're just spheres. They're metal spheres, and they just they twirl.
Yes.
And then he'd shoot them out.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the quarter, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And so that left the paperclip as the only one that didn't. So close, but you did great. I mean, yeah. Again, I didn't realize that you were going to remember. Especially First Class.
It's not even like I remember the context of it. I just remember that
him
image.
using it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Colin Farrell one is really a throw off. So,
gosh.
So immediately behind that, we did get a listener comment on Instagram from Super Fanboy Guy. He says, "Do you think it's weird that his name is Magneto when he can control all metals?" Which is super fair. Like you think, oh, he's a magnet, but to what extent, right? It seemed like an interesting throwaway name, and I think, I mean, they also made fun of it, right? They're like, what's a Magneto? But my friends, it is actually a real word, and it from dictionary.com. Magneto means a combining form representing magnetic or magnetism in compound words, magnetochemistry.
Jeez.
So it's a real word. And they just shortened it down, even though it sounds like Magneto. Magneto. Yeah.
I mean, people don't even call him that much.
No,
Magneto. They're like ERIK.
ERIK.
Is there a compilation of just James McAvoy? ERIK.
I bet there is.
ERIK. Listen to your heart, ERIK.
Oh God.
This is not who we are.
Oh my God. That's
You
so
don't know
accurate.
me anymore, Charles.
Yeah. It's a lot of that, right? The lover's spat.
This is who I am.
Yeah, exactly.
No!
Rocket is like, what is happening? Are they opening shoes again? And so to kind of bounce off of that, in fact, his name, Max Eisenhardt itself, is a German Jewish name meaning as strong as iron. So even his moniker or birth name has meaning to it, purpose to it, whereas like Magnus, I feel, was like, that was more cheeky. Is also Magda, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's all these components where it's just kind of like, okay, that sounds fake or that sounds weird, but there's actually a lot of purpose behind his name, which is actually pretty cool. So, notable adversaries. Okay, everybody. It's literally everybody. He's like a lot like Thanos. He's like part of these. He's part of the upper crust of
He's
rogues,
an
right?
adversary himself.
For sure, right? And so he has fought the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the Defenders, the Inhumans, the list goes on and on. But hey, big surprise, the X-Men are his biggest foes, no doubt.
Hilarious.
It's a love-hate relationship, right? So since day one, as we've seen on X-Men, Uncanny X-Men #1's cover, Magneto and the X-Men have had a tumultuous relationship. Especially when it comes to heroic mutants under Xavier's care. And it all stems from the fact that these two men have grown together in the most important parts of their lives, you know, as not even young adults, as like full-fledged men that just grew into their roles. And it's interesting because, yeah, it's one of these relationships that's very well represented in the films. And we said this in the Professor X episode. And yeah, they just constantly butt heads because they're so alike, but also have their contrasts are so extreme, you know? Because
it's like is it like a Captain America versus Iron Man type ordeal?
I mean, that's a fair comparison, at least from the film standpoint.
Yeah, film standpoint.
Yeah,
mostly.
like where it's just like they have these like visions, but at some point they veer into very different territories. And that's kind of like the Sokovia Accords, right? That's the comparison, I guess, what would be best is that, sure, they both, Iron Man and Cap both thought, sure, like having an organized sort of team to help protect people is great.
Yeah, like the Institute is the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah. So, so in this case, like Xavier, I think, well, it's kind of like what Civil War was originally based off of, right? They wanted mutants to register and superpowered people to register.
Yes.
So they knew who they were. Whereas it's like, well, what's the safety in that if everybody's exposed? So it's like it's kind of like, unfortunately, it's like in the movies where they kind of flip-flop them a few times, you know, like at one point, Xavier's like, we should be free and open and everyone should know, but also be secretive and no one should know.
Yeah.
And then Magneto's like, we should be free. And they both like...
we should be free, but use all powers.
Exactly. So they're on the same side, but not at the same time. Often, very often, you know?
Yeah.
And so you'll see throughout history, there are times where like, predominantly, Professor X is in the right, if you will. He's like very like altruistic and he wants the best for all mutant kind, but also humans. Whereas Magneto is like, no, just mutants. Like he doesn't care about the humans because of the Holocaust and because of everything that happens.
Yeah.
He's got that mentality of like,
He's
they
like,
don't
no,
deserve
you guys,
this.
like you guys cast us out. We don't want you.
Exactly.
Whereas Xavier, he's like, no, we could use our powers, but also we can coexist with humans as well.
Right. Like one of the iconic lines that like Storm had in the cartoon, which I'm sure probably derived from the comics, was like she said like, we protect the world that hates and fears us. And that's what the X-Men are. They're these outcasts that, despite anything, they will fight for the greater, better for humanity and mutant kind.
It's like Black Widow's speech at the end of is it Civil War? Where it's like if you want to arrest me,
Yeah.
But you're not going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you
it's that
need
same
us. Because
exactly.
we're the only ones capable of protecting, this world.
It's that same sentiment.
Yeah.
So the entire course, even when it's chopped up into smaller 22-minute animated segments, that's the same sentiment. And so Magneto is constantly there and constantly pushing against the grain because he also has that same mentality. He's like, I might be starting havoc and you might be fighting against me, but also you're not going to stop me because I'm also a mutant.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so his intentions aren't always bad, but they're not always well conceived, if that makes any sense.
He has the right intention, bad execution.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's where it's going.
Yeah, and so one of the standout examples I had for how the X-Men and Magneto clash was a storyline that I've brought up a few times throughout our episodes, which is the Fatal Attraction storyline. And so this is from, I think, 1995. And so very quickly, in bullet points, I did it quick and easy. The X-Men and Magneto clash. Wolverine nearly guts Magneto during the fight. Magneto gets enraged. He does this a lot. Just FYI, he's always enraged. It's like his worst moment is when he's like hangry. You know what I mean?
Same.
It's
exactly the same.
Like all it takes is that trigger and it's over.
Yeah.
Right? And so Magneto gets enraged and then he strips the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton. So I've talked about this before.
Yes.
He literally pulled the adamantium from
I remember
Wolverine's
this.
pores. So if you swipe these next three pictures here, the screenshots, you can see a quick view of it. And so, mind you, this is like in a comic book in the 1990s. And so,
oh my gosh.
So that one and then the next two. And so he pulls the adamantium from every orifice in his body, every single hole that Wolverine has, including his pores, pulls out the adamantium. Professor X is then triggered, and then he mind wipes Magneto.
Oh my gosh.
Leaving him comatose. And then the entire act itself leads to the discovery that Wolverine's claws are part of his physiology. It's not adamantium.
Oh, it's not just the adamantium.
Yeah,
in there.
it's actually in his body. So this one event triggers so many things. And that's like a Tuesday for X-Men and Magneto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how often they clash. And yet, even after this sort of thing, they still come together and fight together at the end of the day. And they live their lives, what have you. And so it's changed a bit since the 90s. You know, it's like 30 years. But things are still very much of that dynamic, you know. And so, in the cinematic universe, again, like we haven't... The X-Men being pulled into the MCU officially hasn't really happened yet. But... In the cinematic films as we know them, you know, it's always been X-Men versus Magneto, but they did fight against some other folks, or Magneto fought against some other folks as well with the X-Men, including Bolivar Trask, William Stryker, the Hellfire Club, and then Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even... Dark Phoenix. I just still can't believe they tried to really make that happen. It's insane. I hope one day we'll see it, but I'm pretty sure I'll never see it in my lifetime. But I just want X-Men in yellow spandex. Oh, wait, we got that with Wolverine.
It's coming soon.
Woo! We're getting started. Okay. And so when it comes to friends, families, and affiliations, let's be real. He does not have friends. He has like, yeah, right? He has like allies and comrades, but not like an actual friend. Aside Charles Xavier, who we're going to talk about first. But honorable mentions to Sabretooth, Toad, and Mystique in the films. So when it comes to Charles Xavier, once again, we covered him in episode 52, all about Professor X. And so the two have the truest of rivalries that's been tested time and again. And a dynamic that's very well represented. And in modern day form, so the X-Men have come a long way from their original sort of knowledge base, and now there's, like, again, we've mentioned this a few times as well, there's this plant involved. They're on an island. It's a living sentient being. It's a like mutant nation, what have you. So ERIK, Charles Xavier, and Moira 10 or Moira X established a sovereign mutant nation known as Krakoa, where Magneto himself acted as an ambassador on the Quiet Council of Autumn before retiring. So he is retired to a sister entity named Arako. So he's on another island living his best life. I know he's in some newer storylines, but we're not going to cover that. And of course, Professor Charles Xavier, portrayed by Sir Patrick Stewart and then James McAvoy, and as a child by Lawrence Belcher. We've talked about them through and through.
Yeah,
we don't need to spend more time on them, but I'm sure we will throughout the rest of this episode. More importantly, I wanted to go back because the episode that we actually discussed these next two characters is so far back, episode 5 of the show.
Wow,
and we're on 61. So Wanda and Pietro Maximoff.
Ooh.
So 3 words, House of M. And so we discussed it. We discussed it in episode 5, and we've discussed it here and there along the way. But holy hell!
Yeah.
We talked about this with Stephen Ray Morris, actually, our friend Stephen, and I feel like we still didn't scrape the surface, especially when it comes to House of M.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that alone is...
It's so much to embody. So again, I've kind of pulled together some quick notes. Wanda loses her twin boys and suffers a mental breakdown. She starts a warp reality. Doctor Strange steps in, puts her in a coma. Magneto, because you have to remember, in the comics, at this point in time, at least previously, Wanda and Pietro are Magneto's children.
Yes.
And so Magneto takes Wanda into his care, eventually allowing Xavier, the only person he lets see her, visit her. And he thinks that Xavier will help Wanda come out of her stasis. Before both the X-Men and the Avengers attempt to potentially kill Wanda, Quicksilver convinces her to conceive the House of M reality, where everyone lives their best life with their deepest desires. And then Wolverine, the only one equipped with the ability to remember that all of this is fake, because his wish was to remember his memories. Yeah. And so he actually retains that crucial amount of information, leads the charge against Magneto, who regains... against Magneto. And then Magneto kills Quicksilver for starting the whole dang thing. And then at the very end, Wanda mutters the 3 words, no more mutants. And then everything changes back to normal. But then 89% of all mutants were without their abilities, including Magneto. So he later regained his powers thanks to someone, I don't know, some dude named the High Evolutionary.
What the hell?
Yeah.
What is this storyline?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So this is, again, one of those examples where it's like, holy smokes, if Marvel Studios really had all of the characters under one roof at the same time, things could have been very different.
This should be the very last piece of content that Marvel Studios ever
No More Mutants
creates. Yeah,
House of M, like a proper house.
Like if it gets to a point of like they just gotta
stop.
They just gotta stop.
Yeah,
you just do that.
That'd be wild, right? Yeah. So
and then you have my wife just end the whole tenure.
Right. Exactly. Which of course there's been a rumor that because that version of Wanda died in the MCU, that they're going to revive one from another dimension, and that one's going to be the daughter of Magneto. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard that.
I have heard that one actually.
That's the rumor. Is that
would
how
she
she's
only do?
back.
Would it only work in like that universe, or does it work across like a multiverse?
Well, it depends how they bring her in, right? Like, how is she introduced?
Okay.
So and also, do they negate the other one somehow? And being like, oh, she wasn't Prime Earth. Yeah. So we'll see.
That would be. I mean, Elizabeth Olsen has said herself like she would love to dip into.
Yeah, she still wants to do stuff, and
this House of M.
Yeah. She mentioned it by name, which is really.
But it is a pretty dark storyline.
It's all, and that's like, again,
yeah.
Like that's a quick, like that's not even the nitty gritty. You know what I mean? It's across multiple titles, multiple comics. So dive into that if you want. I'm gonna reread it for sure, I think. but yeah, Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, portrayed by Elizabeth Olsen, Jeffrey's wifey, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, aka Craven. And Evan Peters, if you so desire.
Yeah.
So yeah, we first saw them in was it Thor? Dark World at the end?
The credit scene?
Post-credit scene, yeah.
I forget which one it is at the end. I don't know if it's I think
Civil
it's
War.
Avengers.
Avengers.
Yeah,
oh, yes, that's right.
Avengers.
Yeah. With the
Age of
Doctor.
Ultron. No,
because
I'm sorry. They came out in Age of Ultron.
So it was Avengers for sure.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Might have
Or Winter
been
Soldier.
One of them, yes. I forget.
It's
I
in the
legitimately
timeline.
forget.
Yeah. So, and then last scene in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as well as Age of Ultron, respectively. Which is kind of like funny. And then, of course, Ralph Boner is coming back.
Ralph Boner.
He's making his reappearance in Agatha, Coven of
I've seen some
Chaos.
rumors on that, on leaks
I
on that.
haven't seen anything really.
Because I follow.
Are they
like,
good?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're really good.
I'll take that as a great yes. So yeah, there's barely a drop or let alone a crumb of connection in the cinematic universe between the twins and Magneto. The twins, oddly enough, there was more with Peter Maximoff, with Evan Peters' version. They really kind of actually made an effort to put a connection there. So I don't know. We'll see if they actually resolve any of that. Like I mentioned previously, Anya Eisenhart. So nothing more to say than what we already covered, but her cinematic counterpart was named Nina Gursky. So that's the little girl that could conjure nature and make the animals come around and all that stuff. She was portrayed by T.J. McGibbon. She had a small role in X-Men Apocalypse, but again, the undertones and relevance were absolutely on par with Erik's comic book origins. And then here's somebody that we have not talked about at all, but she exists in the cinematic world in some capacity, and she has a very relevant connection to Erik, and that is Lorna Dane. We've maybe mentioned her once, and she is the mistress of magnetism.
That's cool. And
her powers manifested at a young age. So this is a crazy story also. So as a young child, her father realized, I think she was maybe 3 or 4, that she was not his daughter.
Yeesh.
Which then leads him to realize, my wife had an affair and cheated on me with another man. So he wanted to clear the air. He took his daughter and his wife on a plane. I don't know why they were on a plane, but they were fighting. And in this chaos, she's just yelling the entire time, stop fighting, stop fighting, stop fighting,
Oh, yeah.
And her powers manifested and the plane exploded.
Oh, my God.
She was the only survivor.
Yep.
As it goes. And she killed her parents, of course. And so that magnetic force was so strong that Magneto felt it, and he went to...
He was searching for it.
He was searching for it, and he found this little girl, and then he realizes oh, it's my daughter. She's my daughter. And so the mother had an affair with Erik.
Yeah.
Birthed this daughter, Lorna. Tried to convince her husband, no, it's yours. Clearly wasn't his. And then during this whole incident, it actually mutated the girl. So she had brown hair at first, and it changed it green. So it was bright green. And so when Magneto found her, he's basically I'm not ready to take this child on.
No one ever is, man. No one ever is.
So he had one of his oldest colleagues named Mastermind, who was in one of the films as well. And he has her essentially wipe Lorna's brain, memories of that entire incident. And so she just believes, in her initial thoughts, is that, my mommy and daddy died when I was a baby, and my aunt and uncle have raised me. And so she knows nothing about Magneto. And so in the early days, he used to use it against her. When she first came on the scene, he was you have powers like me. You're my daughter. And so he would play with her, and he'd be you shouldn't be with the X-Men. You should help me, even though they weren't related at the time.
Yeah.
But then around 2003, they then canonically confirmed, like, hey, here's this amazing backstory. Guess what? Y'all are actually related. And so for the last 20 years, she's officially been his daughter.
It's dark.
So, yeah, all of the really great stories are sadly very dark.
It's traumatic as hell.
So her full backstory was revealed in 2005, 42 years after his comic debut. So not only did they take 20 years to give him an origin, they then took 42 years to give his daughter an actual backstory. So he has 3 children essentially in the comics that we know of on top of Anya. So 4 total, and God knows how many more.
God.
And it's 3 are some of the most prominent heroes, which are Wanda, Pietro, and Lorna. Yeah, and so there is a Lorna Dane in the cinematic universe, sort of. She was portrayed by Emma Dumont in the 2017 television series, The Gifted. And so this was that show that was on Fox on primetime evenings. And in the show, she had green hair. She was very fair-skinned, magnetism powers. And she knew she would make references to her father on the show. But he was never on it.
Shown,
yeah. They never brought him on. But yeah, so these two have not crossed paths in cinematic universe because she's not in any of the films. So yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe we'll see her later on. But I will say, she ends up in a very serious relationship with Cyclops' younger brother at one point. So they split off and they create their own X team, and they're known as X Factor.
Wow.
So yeah, they're really cool. I like them a lot. So this is when Magneto's story really starts to unfurl. Love interests. So he's had his fair share of lady loves throughout the decades, including Wasp, if you can believe it.
Wow.
But there are a select few who stand out among the rest when it comes to his comic book lore. And so I'm going to bounce between the cinematic universe and then comic book instead of the other way around. So in the films, they linked him to Raven Darkholme, a.k.a. Mystique, first portrayed by the iconic Rebecca Romijn and then Jennifer Lawrence. First seen in X-Men 1 and then last seen in Days of Future Past. Do we not see her? Wait, no. Dark Phoenix, sorry. My acronyms.
For Jennifer
Phoenix.
Lawrence,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence.
And then Days of Future Past, that's Rebecca.
For Rebecca, yeah. And so in the films, the implications had always been made throughout the cinematic run, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they ever had a full-fledged relationship. They were just kind of like
messing around. As one does.
But in the comics, it's the same, if not less than the cinematic, because despite the two having been in cahoots from the old days and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, they have never explicitly had a romantic, let alone sexual relationship in the comics. And Mystique is actually very gay. And
nice.
she has a partner. Yeah.
Love that.
So there's none of that in there at all. So that's also kind of why it was like, for me, at least as a seasoned comic book fan, if you will, them trying to like make something happen with Jennifer Lawrence and Fassbender, I was like, what are you doing? It's like weird. I don't like it. I don't like it. And then in the cinematic end, there is, we're going to start with Marie D'Acanto, aka Rogue, portrayed by Anna Paquin. So in the films, there was no semblance of a relationship, a connection of any sort. They kind of had the one scene in X-Men 1 where her hair turns white, but nothing more than, just that and the occasional interaction. Because she had the connection with Iceman,
yes,
Shawn Ashmore. But in the comics, I had to hold myself back from going like crazy with this section because I could talk for days about Rogue for obvious reasons.
You can.
Yeah, and so very as short as humanly possible, Anna Marie Darkholme LeBeau, aka Rogue, she is married to Gambit in the comics. So Magneto and Rogue, these two have cultivated a pretty interesting story over the years in the comics. a constantly spoken but sometimes spoken thing between them that ultimately established a pretty harsh love triangle between ERIK, Rogue, and Gambit. It makes me angry.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's really sad because it's like at times you can tell that she is like playing with Gambit. Like she's not, like she wants Magneto. Like, but because Gambit is there for her, you'll do. And it makes me angry. I'm like, he's genuinely in love with you. But yet here she is. She's running after ERIK LENSHERR. And so it's expected that a lot of the dynamic is due to the fact that they've been through a lot with one another.
Yeah.
Especially when Rogue was going through the whole Ms. Marvel thing, and Carol Danvers, for the record. And while she was getting her powers and working through her powers and being haunted by the psychic impression of Carol Danvers, Magneto is the one that actually kind of helped her through that and killed the manifestation. And so they've been stranded on islands together with no powers. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. Yeah. Jeff making the face again. Yeah.
Scandy.
You get me.
Scandy.
Yeah, and also it's said that because of Rogue's powers with Magneto's powers, they counteract and negate one another. So,
sorry.
Sucky. Another story for another day. But they can touch without issue. And so that's really like been a pinnacle for those two. But again, she married Gambit. We're good. They're good. All is right.
Life is good.
Life is good. And then there's Suzanne Dane in the cinematic universe. So while the Foxverse wasn't nearly as messy as the Sonyverse, mostly, they definitely had one hell of a time, like establishing Eric's love interest into cinematic continuity. So Suzanne Dane herself didn't have a counterpart. She's Lorna's mom. But their version of it in the Foxverse was to amalgamate her with Magda, which Fox did in with these two next characters that we're going to talk about, which are Suzanne. Again, Susanna, sorry. Suzanne, she was one whopping comic book appearance in the comics. And again, she cheated on her husband, had a baby, and she died.
Jeez.
and then Magda Gursky. So she technically, Magda in the comics technically does not have an MCU counterpart, but the closest thing is the woman that we see in Apocalypse who has the child with ERIK. Who gets killed by Arrow. And so
gets me every time.
Yeah, man, it's vey. And so the Magda in the comics, she's sometimes it's interesting because of the Wanda thing.
Yeah.
Like they've retconned things, right? She is his daughter. She's not his daughter. All that. And so Magda, sometimes she's only depicted as conceiving Anya. Sometimes she's perceived as conceiving Anya, Pietro, and Wanda. And then sometimes it's like nothing. Like, you know, it's weird. The timeline's really weird. But yeah, so she apparently had the twins sometime after she left him, after discovering he's a mutant. And then she died. So it's like, all these women die. They pop out babies and die. It's so sad. I don't like it. But last but not least, there was a Ms. Maximoff featured in Days of Future Past as well as X-Men Apocalypse. So she was the mom of Peter Maximoff, who is Quicksilver, aka Ralph Boner. So she was in two films, and then she had two unnamed daughters. So one was like the first time we see Quicksilver, he's got that little girl on his lap that's wearing pink.
Yes.
And everyone's like, it's Wanda. This was before Elizabeth Olsen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was the speculation she never had a name, and they mentioned another daughter, she never had a name, and so that woman apparently had all three kids, but whatever, nobody knows.
It's Wanda.
It's Wanda. She's in pink, and she kind of has red hair. Wanda. It was a whole thing. So anyway, it's a whole confusing thing. They've just really tried to pull things together and be like, it's her. But none of them have actually.
Everybody just likes picking things out, man.
Yeah, they're just like,
That's
let's
what I've
consolidate.
noticed.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I know.
That's exhausting.
It is. 'Cause it's like just give the proper storyline like time to grow. But yeah, again, I think the best representation of all the women that they've brought into the MCU or the cinematic universe is the one from Apocalypse that died with her daughter.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best.
I think that's like the most we've seen. Like,
absolutely.
Eric just.
Yeah, completely.
Like, I'm good here.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to live my life.
Yeah.
And then someone snitched.
I know.
And now he has to kill everybody.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
That's
like it's
what
so
happened.
like it's so dramatic. Like
Right?
he's somebody exposed me for being a killer. Oh, I guess I gotta kill them.
I gotta kill everybody now. And it's messed up because he saved somebody's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like right back to the previous discussion we had. Like, he's not a bad guy, but like
People
they
are
make
scared.
him do bad
People are just scared.
things.
They're like, oh my gosh.
Right. Because like, when I was watching my 13-minute clip of him using powers, he saved that man from a falling like piece of like
That's what I'm saying.
machinery.
Like, oh my god, he saved the man.
And they're like, oh,
but how
he's
did
a
he do
mutant.
it? How did he do it?
Yeah.
Is he a mutant?
He's a mutie.
Now I feel weird. Now it's
Yeah.
like someone stole like your lunch or something from the fridge, and you're like, oh, that guy's weird.
And also, how idiotic is it to be like, oh, he can lift 5 tons of metal?
Why are
Let's
we
go
operating
kill
these
him."
machines still?
And also, let's go kill him and his family.
Yeah.
Because they're different, you know?
Yeah.
And again, it started in the 60s. And, you know, like you can find all these interviews with Stan and how he's talked about how real history has
Like the
impacted.
oppression and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
The
why he created the
oppression.
X-Men.
Exactly. And also, you know, like race wars and all these things. And again, going back to that idea that they're being killed off just for being different.
Yes.
Sound familiar at all?
America.
Soundbite. Yeah, and so that's why the X-Men, you know, are so relevant no matter what era, right? Because there's always going to be some oppression.
Yeah.
And in humanity, and it's not so much that it's mutants versus humans. It's just different people versus the
Agreed.
norm.
And then Eric's like, yeah, well, gotta kill you now.
Yeah, exactly.
You disrespected my family, aka killing them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotta kill you. Sorry.
Exactly. And so, you know, it's like, it is what it is. And so speaking of, I originally had this a little lower, but listener comment, rather question from our wonderful Patreon patron, Andrew Frank. He asks very simply, Magneto, villain or anti-hero?
Do people classify those as the same things? Because it's like villain, hero, and then there's an anti-hero.
Well, I think villains are definitely like, they're evil. They intend to do evil.
Oh, yeah. Like some Joker type stuff.
Yes, he is a full-fledged villain. There's nothing nice about the Joker. The Joker intends to harm people. He just loves chaos. Chaos. Or anti-hero.
I feel like
Anti-hero.
Deadpool is more of like an anti-hero.
Interesting.
But Magneto, I don't think I would classify as a villain.
Right.
I'm in a rut here,
It's
Andrew.
hard.
I'm in a
It's very difficult because just for the same reasons that we just mentioned, he could save somebody. They're like, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, well, gotta kill you now. And then he does.
I mean, yeah, you watch all 4 of those movies. I'm thinking strictly Fassbender just because they're the most recent memory.
He's so good.
It's just
I love him.
like in First Class. Okay, I kind of don't remember First Class as much, but so I guess we'll use Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Like they help him escape.
Yeah.
He's like, I got to kill Trask. I got to kill, you know,
Yeah.
and then Charles is like Charles, or he's like Eric. I know you can hear me.
FYI,
Please.
he has fingers to his forehead.
You're better than this, Eric. I'm sorry, Charles. I've made up my mind. This is not who we are.
I know McAvoy is so like every time he says the line, I feel it like I've heard it for the first time, just because he says it with such conviction. It's like, this is not who we are.
This is not ERIK.
Constantly. He's the nagging wife. He is the nagging wife.
I mean, ERIK could have just murdered everybody.
Sure.
I mean, he's like, you know what? You're right, Charles.
Yeah.
I'm better than this.
Yeah.
Boom, I'm gonna leave. All right, cool.
He's like, and he just does the floating.
Yeah,
he's like, peace out.
And then it's like, when you think everything's all good, someone goes and like talks to ERIK and is like, he's like, yo, need your help.
Yeah.
He's like, all right. Boom, kills everybody. Like, what?
Exactly.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anti-hero, but I wouldn't say villain.
Right. He's somewhere in the middle.
Like,
he's very gray.
He's a hero when he needs to be.
Yes.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
But is he saving things that he caused?
Is he the savior of his own chaos?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know? It's like Wanda. Funny enough, in WandaVision,
the fruit don't
she
fall far
thought
from
she
the
was,
tree.
helping the people, but really she just took it over everybody's minds.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole town.
Exactly.
She got it from her father. That's crazy.
She got it from her father. Yeah, like father, like daughter. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree almost entirely. Yeah, I think he has moments where he skews a little more villain, but I would also say he's leaning maybe more toward the
he's
anti-hero.
not on my speed dial like, oh, I need saving.
Because he's gonna look at it and go,
he's like,
but in the same token, like, he's also relentless as he is reliable. I don't know. It really, I don't know. Like, for Charles, he would do anything.
100%.
You know what I mean? And yet at the same time,
I'm calling at least 5 people before I call Magneto.
Right.
The X-Men. I'm calling at least 5 people.
That's funny. So, when it comes to other versions and in other media, there's a lot. There's a lot that are worth talking about. There's an identity of his he went by Joseph, where he was like, he forgot everything. He forgot everything. And he was a very good person.
Yeah.
Which, shockingly enough. And I think that's more of reason why Rogue fell in love with him. But we're only going to talk about one fairly quickly. ERIK Magnus Lensherr of Earth 295, a.k.a. the Age of Apocalypse. Ooh. So he's pretty awesome. He's probably one of my favorite iterations of Magneto. But the story is, when Prime Earth Charles Xavier died, he was killed by his future son. That's in the main continuity. So I think there was like episode. There was like issue, I want to say 49 or 50 of X-Men Series 2 in 1992. Probably 95 by that point. He was killed by his future son with a psychic knife to the head, I believe. And so when he did that, he put Xavier in a coma, aka then he died. Magneto then took that as like, it was so tragic and so traumatizing to him. He then decided to take Xavier's dream on himself. So he became who Charles Xavier was for the X-Men. And he started his own X-Men. And so that changed the entire course of the universe. And it made this new thing called the Age of Apocalypse, which is very much that. Apocalypse was basically the ruler of the earth. Wow. And Magneto was the Professor X, who was just simply trying to protect people. And so, he made his own version of the X-Men, and they worked with various teams in that timeline. He and Rogue were married in that universe. And so for the for the same reasons that, again, that like in continuity, that they're able to touch one another, at least sometimes, not all the time, because she does have the same powers. And so it's interesting because they still don't necessarily show affection as they would if they could touch each other, but you get the vibe that she's maybe lost control of her powers at times with him. But they were able to conceive a child together, and they named him Charles. So there's a Charles Lensherr in the Age of Apocalypse. But the entire universe got destroyed, of course, as they always often do. But that's one of my favorite ones. And another one we're going to cover is the animation one. So I wanted to very quickly pivot to our Almost Was, because these two are surprisingly linked together. So when it comes to Almost Was, horror icon Christopher Lee was one of the candidates for Magneto for the original film, in X-Men, of course, as well as Terrence Stamp, who we've heard his name a few times as well. Mm-hmm. And he ended up being Stick in the Elektra movie. Uh-huh. And then that brings us to David Hemblin, who, he's the particularly surprising one because, fun fact, he voiced Magneto in the cartoon. So he voiced him from 1992 to 1997, and he was a candidate. I believe he auditioned for the role that Ian McKellen ended up getting. But in addition to that, David sadly passed away just not too long ago in 2020. So from there, we'll see how much stake Magneto and his new voice actor will have in the cinematic universe and the new cartoon series. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see the future of the characters. So what do you think? Do you think we're going to get that cameo? Is that fully confirmed in Deadpool?
According to that leaker guy?
Yeah.
Yes. I think so, yes.
Holy smokes.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
So we'll see.
But I mean...
Do you think they'll kill him?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, anything is possible in a Deadpool movie.
Sure. Yeah.
But also... I don't know, like how long can you milk
Magneto.
a character?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're milking Wolvie, but
yeah,
I think that's just a different different level. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying like McKellen or Fassbender are not on that level, but it's just like,
yeah.
I mean, we've had these characters, at least Magneto, we've had him for over 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And
yeah. It's like
what else do you want to do with him?
Yeah.
Like what else do you want to do with him?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I don't know if we'll get like another full blown like kind of story with him, movie with him, show. Doubt it. Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, if you do another movie or show, or whatever, it has to be Fassbender. I just don't know if Ian McKellen would just do it again.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion,
he's 93.
Other than nothing more than a cameo, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to see Ian McKellen make a cameo, not die, but I would also like to see Fassbender put into the fold, but also not milked. I know it's a tall order all around, but I would love to see them both back in some capacity. And then also just like for them to tie up whatever they could, you know what I mean? Just not to, again, not kill him, but just put him somewhere where he's existing somewhere else. We don't need to talk about him at all, but hey, he's there. I agree. So that's what I would love. I really want to see both of them get the same, I mean, not that Patrick Stewart really got like a nice send-off for what he got in Doctor Strange, but at least he got some redemption with even the aesthetic of Professor X and being part of the Illuminati, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see something that's a little more than what they've had to deal with in previous films, but we'll see, I guess. And that brings us to suggested reading. And so these first two come courtesy of Patreon patron Andrew. So thanks again. He suggests 2014 and 15 Magneto by Cullen Bunn and Gabriel Walta, as well as X-Men Magneto Testament by Greg Pak and Alejandro Arbona. So Magneto Testament, that's the one where they actually first introduced his official origin story. So that's where we get the Max Eisenhardt and all that stuff backstory. So it's a really momentous one. I believe it came out in 2000, which, shocking, is the same year that the film came out. So they timed that very well. As for me, I'm an oldie but a goodie, so I'm going to go with the classics, as Gambit says. X-Men Series 2, number 1 by my convention snack buddy Chris Claremont and Marvel legend turned DC icon Jim Lee, as well as, again, Age of Apocalypse original run from 1995. Those are my 2 favorite. And of course, there's the new stuff, the Krakoa stuff, the Hickman stuff. It's all good. The white Magneto suit stuff is great too. So yeah, just definitely read it. With that said, that's the end of the show.
Wow.
So thanks for listening. Next episode, we're going back. We're going with the classic with this one. So we're gonna tackle finally our new Cap and Forever Falcon, Sam Wilson, for our next character study, especially with Captain America 4 in the horizon.
Yeah.
And a Weird Groot salute to Edgar, Andrea, Laura, Claire, Katie, Ed, Jenny, Andrew, Sherry, Ariel, Nats, Melanie, Eve, Ashley, Robin, the Arachnid, and Joe Liz. Follow us on social, STRKCNTROST, and if you like what you hear, review, rate, and subscribe.
Yes.
That's it.
Once again, thanks again for listening. We will catch y'all in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
All those years wasted fighting each other, Charles. To have a precious few of them